Welcome to the BiggerPockets Business Podcast, show number 21.
Welcome to a real-world MBA from the School of Hard Knocks, where entrepreneurs reveal what it really takes to make it. Whether you're already in business or you're on your way there, this show is for you. This is BiggerPockets Business.
Hey there, everybody. I am Jay Scott. I am your co-host for the BiggerPockets Business Podcast, and I am here again this week with Mrs. Carol Scott. How you doing today, Carol?
Pretty darn happy as always. Life is pretty darn great, and I'm happy. Before we get started, thank you. I want to say thank you so much to all of our listeners. So many of you have already gotten online and filled out our listener survey. So thank you so much for that. And if you're a listener who hasn't done so already, here's another reminder to please help us out. We would absolutely love to hear from you and tell us what you think about the show, what we can do to make it even better for you. So go to biggerpockets.com/biz survey. That's biggerpockets.com/BIZ survey, so we can get to know you a little better and keep making it what you want it to be.
Awesome. And we have a great show today, so we're going to jump right in. Today's guest he's a true entrepreneur at heart. So his name's James Anderson, and he has started several businesses over the last decade. And his latest is a brick and mortar business aimed at creating and providing his customers great experiences. His business is called Forged Axe Throwing, and you can probably guess from the title what his business does. But in the past 3 years, he and his partner have grown that business to nearly $1 million in revenue. He tells us all about the details there, and he tells us how he grew the business, and he gives us a lot of actionable tips along the way. At the end of the conversation, we have a really good discussion about what you can be doing today to get your entrepreneurial career off the launch pad, and how you could potentially start a brick and mortar business yourself, even if you don't have any cash. Okay, so if you want to find out more about James and more about this show, you can check out our show notes at biggerpockets.com/bizshow21. That's biggerpockets.com/bizshow21. Okay, now let's bring in James Anderson. James, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, guys. Pleasure to be with you. Long-time listener, first-time caller. I cannot wait to talk to you guys. This is awesome.
Well, I'm a long-time intrigued person and never done what is happening in your business. So tell us, James, what is Forged and how in the world did it start?
Yeah, so Forged is an axe throwing arena, and we have been in business for just over 3 years now. So I'm actually sure a lot of your listeners have probably either experienced axe throwing themselves or heard about a venue opening up, because the sport has seen an explosion worldwide. There's been venues opening up all over, and we were lucky enough to be one of the first venues out there pushing the sport forward, and we've been ecstatic with the growth of everything. We've seen tens of thousands of people come through our doors, tons of smiling faces, millions and millions of high fives clapped. It's been an epic journey starting this business.
That's awesome. And I have dozens of questions. I know Carol has dozens of questions, but before we get to Forged and all about Forged, we want to hear a little bit about you. So can you take us kind of back through your backstory? Who are you? Where did you come from? And kind of what led you to opening this business?
Absolutely. So just going way back, I'm from originally Vancouver Island in Canada. So I'm from a city called Victoria on the southern tip of the island. And I've always been involved in sort of the outdoor pursuits and really interested in getting out there, experiencing things. My first job I ever had was teaching snowboarding, and in the summer times I'd teach windsurfing at a summer camp. So I've always been, into coaching, into doing things outdoors and experiencing, sort of new things and sharing that stoke with other people. So I've done a myriad of jobs throughout my career. When I was just out of high school, I actually moved to Costa Rica, and I ended up working in an e-commerce business. This was in 2001, so e-commerce was pretty fresh at the time. We actually got into the beta of the Google AdWords program. So I was helping figure out how to run ads for this American e-commerce business that was offshoring things. We had to set up our own voice over IP system because there was no such thing as Skype. There was no Ring Central, like none of these tools we use today. It was like a huge PBX box. Like we had routers and cables running all over the place. We had to hire an admin guy just to run our voice over IP system. It was a real education in small business. And that's where I got my first taste of small business, actually. But shortly after that, I moved back to Canada and I ended up going back to school. I studied tourism because that was, I realized that was really what I wanted to do, my passion. And I went to a school in Kamloops, British Columbia for adventure guiding. It was Thompson Rivers University. And at that time I was thinking, I want to just use my love of the outdoors, and I want to spend as much time as possible outside and teach people about the amazing world, like the outdoors. And that way I can go skiing every day. I could go kayaking. I could do whatever I wanted. So I got really, really involved in whitewater and rafting. And I met, a really good friend of mine now, and who's now my current business partner, Brett. So we would always talk about, what rafting company we were going to start. We both had this itch. We wanted to start something, and we were trying to figure out how we could start a rafting company. Maybe we could buy the one that we worked for. But the thing about whitewater rafting is there's only so many rivers you can do it on. And on all the rivers, especially here in Canada, the rivers that you can do it on are permitted. So there's only so many permits that are allowed per river. So as time goes on, those permits start to become more and more and more valuable. And the guys getting out of the industry are going to sell these things for millions of dollars. And we're like, well, we're broke. We don't have millions of dollars. My jobs at that time were tree planting, which I was getting paid 10 cents a tree for. And then I was raft guiding. And you don't make $1 million raft guiding. I can tell you that right now. Great lifestyle, but it's not a moneymaker. So we were looking for something else to do. We actually started another business, which is an event lighting business. Our busiest season would be the Christmas season, where we would install millions of lights all over Victoria, Whistler, and Kamloops. We had crews going all over the place installing Christmas lights. Then we sort of got into wedding lighting, and then we were selling lights to festivals and events and things like that. And actually this week, exciting times, those businesses are selling this week. No joke. So we've held on to them for years, but that seed money we took, and from one really profitable Christmas light season, we realized we wanted to start something that had better cash flow year round. We wanted to expand our breadth. We're tourism guys. We don't want to be in home service, although home service was a great business at that time, gave us the opportunity. We wanted to get into something where we could share that love of teaching and where our clients just love us and want to come back. You don't quite get that in the home service industry. And, that's what we thought was missing. And we found the opportunity for Forged, and, we went for it and invested all our own money. We didn't take any loans. We did it all ourselves, which is probably a mistake in hindsight. It's great to use leverage when you can, but we did it ourselves. We were really proud of that. And we started Forged. So it was 2 months from the time we got our lease in February of 2017 until we opened our doors.
Very cool. So this was back in 2017. And remind me, what is your business partner's name?
Brett. Yeah.
Brett. So Brett and James were doing what so like you said, axe throwing as a whole, it's not totally new right now. We're in the middle of 2019. So it sounds like, though, this was very, very back in the beginning of when axe throwing became a thing. So what specifically were you doing with Brett? And you had just spark of interest, like, oh, let's just open an axe throwing company. Like, how exactly does that happen?
Yes, that's a great question. When we were doing the event lighting, it was very seasonal. And so we would work for crazy for, 3, 4, 5 months, get everything up, and it sort of tapered on and then it tapered off. Our busiest season or our busiest month would be, November, December. And then after that, no one wants to talk to you about Christmas lights except to take them all down, right? So it's very, very, very seasonal. And Brett was, he would sort of make his money and he would go traveling. And so in 2015 or 16, he was on a road trip in Panama, and we would text back and forth on WhatsApp, like just sharing like business ideas and stuff like that. And I was working at a tourism marketing firm. Actually, I had a full-time job as well as running the event lighting business. And marketing was sort of my background. I had this tourism degree. I thought I wanted to try and use it, and I made some incredible connections working in a marketing firm and an agency. It was really, really amazing. And to this day, my former employer, Deirdre, is one of my mentors, and she's given me invaluable amounts of incredible advice. So huge shout out, Deirdre, if you're listening to this. But I was actually tasked. One of our clients was a large tourism organization, and I got tasked with finding some trends that millennials were doing that we could pitch to BuzzFeed. So I was like, okay, I started looking at all these things in Canada. What do we have? We have craft beer, just like everywhere else. We got, cool food, just like everywhere else. We got, this, we got that. And then I was like, wait, there's this dude like throwing axes in his backyard in Ontario. Like, that is crazy cool. Like, I thought that was so neat. And so actually I texted Brett, who was I think he was in a hostel in Colombia at the time or something like that, on a surfing bit of the trip. And I was like, hey man, like, do you think this could be our next thing? And the next message he sent me back was like, hey, I started drafting logos. What do you think of this? What do you think about the name Forged? And I was like, oh, sweet. Okay, he's in. And I remember I was actually at a media event, and it was a really heated one. We were doing this public community sort of feedback thing, and we were getting all this feedback for one of our clients in the marketing firm. And they were doing this sort of unpopular development, and I was the media guy, so we were getting all these heated questions, and I was like kind of sweating, and in my pocket I'm getting all these messages from Brett. He's super excited about this new business, and it was a complete realization of like, I don't want to be at this event right now. I'd really rather be focused on my phone and what's happening in here. So we started working on it, and we had this plan. And that summer, Brett and I went to Burning Man and had a huge, enlightening experience. It was all kinds of art, colors, lights, everything's all happening. And we're talking about what we want to do. And I was like, maybe it's time for a big lifestyle change. We've got the lighting businesses that are doing well, and and maybe it's time we do this. So we decided sort of then and there that we were going to make a major change, and we were going to take our profits and reinvest it in ourselves, which was our business. And actually, funny enough, our camp at Burning Man, we called the Sexy Dumpster Dive Camp. And we had this huge sign that we made, and with marquee letters. Brett made the thing with crazy lighting and everything like that. And we hung it on our wall here at Forge because we had it in the back, and we were like, oh, just throw it on the wall. And it's since become so popular, we started making merchandise with it. So these are some of the hats that we have right now. So it says the Sexy Dumpster Dive Camp, and people love it. They get their photo taken beside it. They pick up a hat on their way out. So it's sort of come full circle. So that's how it all happened. I moved from Victoria to Whistler. The first assets we bought for the business were 2 camping cots, and we set them up in our warehouse. And Brett and I would just wake up. We would drill holes in the wall. We'd, blow the drywall out of our nose and, do plumbing or whatever it was that day. And I'm terrible at construction. Luckily, Brett's really, really good. So I would be the laborer at Brett's direction. And we got her done in 2 months with the help of tons of our friends and family and every favor we could call in.
Okay. I want to talk about the construction, but I want to start with what happened before the construction, because I want to know, what did you do to validate your idea? I mean, did you just say, okay, axe throwing's a trend, let's give it a try? Or did you somehow validate that there was actually a market for this? Did you do like a study of your demographics and decide this is the right place to do it? This is the right place to have a building? I mean, did you do like a business plan? What did you do before you said, okay, we're going all in and we're going to actually put some money into this?
Yeah, it's funny to think back on that because, once you achieve a certain level of success, we've been open for 3 years. We're not at the peak of success or anything like that. But, people say like, oh, you're so lucky you started, at that time. That's so amazing that you had that opportunity. And it's like, well, a lot of things happened for us to get there, right? The first thing is like both Brett and I went to school for tourism. We've been studying tourism for years. We've literally been working in the industry for ages. So we've seen trends come and go. We've done tons of research on the subject. And I had the fortune of working for this tourism marketing firm, the Tartan Group, for 4 years or 3.5 years before we started Forge. So, we were in the trenches. We were doing research of all these different trends. And a huge trend that we both saw within the industry was that adults are looking for different things to do in the realm of what we call soft adventure. So, not everyone is going to go hike Everest and not everyone's going to be a pro downhill mountain biker. You don't have to do those things to participate in recreation. And what happens a lot of the time is people age out of recreation. Maybe they play hockey in high school and then they drop it in university if they're not quite good enough, or they keep going in university and then they drop it because they get a family and kids and they don't do anything, and there's this weird narrative, especially in North America and Western Europe, where it's like, well, when you're done work, what do? You go to the bar and you drink it all away and then you talk to your friends about how miserable your life is. It's like, no, people don't want to do that. People want to do fun things. People want to do cool stuff. And I got nothing against drinking beer. Drinking beer is the best. I love it. But you want to do something while you're drinking beer, right? You want to compete with your friends. You want to have a good time. And soft adventure, something that you can teach someone in a short amount of time that they can share with their friends. They can share that excitement and stoke, and that you can participate in year-round is key. When we looked at the area that we were going to come to, Whistler is a resort town. It's got some of the most famous skiing in North America and some of those famous mountain biking in North America. But, the dirty secret of most resort towns is the majority of people who come here don't actually participate in those two incredible hallmark experiences. Skiing's pretty scary to a lot of people. We got a lot of international travelers and maybe one person in the family wants to ski. What's everyone else going to do during that time? Yeah, they can go shopping. Yeah, they could go to the art gallery, but there's literally nothing to do inside. In Whistler, we've got a movie theater, we got the art gallery, we got a spa, we got an escape room, but there's nothing to do for bachelor parties, bachelorette parties, wedding meet and greets, and anyone else who just wants to flex their muscles, get a little bit of adrenaline out there, and do something that is authentically Canadian when they're in Canada. So axe throwing.
So you mentioned soft adventure, and I've never actually heard that category. I assume it's a real category. There are probably millions of categories I haven't heard of. But what other businesses would fall into that category of soft adventure, just to give our listeners some context here?
Yeah, absolutely. So, adventure tourism is oftentimes looked at as the most hardcore. I used Everest just as an example, but when people think of adventure tourism, they think like, oh, you got to be at a certain level of athleticism. It's really for this elite group. But anything that involves, an activity, an element of culture, and a sense of place where you're being educated and learning about the environment that you're in, I think falls into the category of adventure. I had the opportunity when I was working with a marketing firm to work with this organization called the Adventure Travel Trade Association. And I saw adventure from many different facets. There's walking tours through cities all over Europe that would fall into like a soft adventure where you're not just doing like a city tour where you're like, oh, this is that and this is that, but you're walking with a local guide who's showing you a local food prepared in a traditional way that is maybe has some sort of historical significance, and you're exerting yourself. Maybe you're doing a bike ride along like a fairly easy trail, like through the woods or something like that. It doesn't have to be hardcore mountain biking, but it has to be something that pushes you just a little bit, whether that's physically or whether that's, intellectually, where you're like, oh, that's not what I thought I was going to be eating, or that's not a typical hamburger. That's a different thing. And it gives you a real sense of place.
Very cool. So you've defined that this whole soft brought together. You saw this huge opportunity, that there was a need and a trend for this soft adventure. You decided your focus for your soft adventure was going to be axe throwing. So what then? You said you had some money that you rolled over maybe from your lighting business. How much money did you each put in, and what specifically did you do with that in the beginning?
Yeah, so Brett and I each we said to ourselves, we think we can start this for $60,000, which is Canadian dollars, by the way. So it's probably about 50 grand US. And we ended up putting a little bit more in over time, but that was our initial sort of guarantee to each other. Hey, I'm going to put in this much. You're going to put in this much. The first things that we did a lot of work beforehand. Obviously, we did, write a basic business plan, not a 50-page MBA plan, but like a 3-page. Here's what we're going to do. Let's refer back to this often and make sure that we're on track. And then we got our lease. That was the first real challenge. There's a real shortage of places you can rent with high ceilings and a square footage cost that is going to work for our kind of business. We're in the recreation business, which requires a large amount of square footage per person. If you look at like the bar and restaurant business, that's much more condensed. You can pack people in there. You got 4 people sitting at a small table. We're throwing axes around. You can't do that. You need a lot of space. So we needed to find that number, that square footage cost that was going to work. So that took a really long time. And then when we were approaching the landlord, we asked for some concessions, and they played real hardball with us because there were so many other people who wanted to rent this place. So originally we wanted to rent 2 units and open up with a bigger space. And they were like, nah, you know what? Like, we're just going to give you 1, and we're going to give this roofing company next to you the other space. And that was a real disappointment. And we had to change our plan. We lost half the space we thought we were going to have. And this roofing company went in beside us. And funny story, that roofing company actually stopped paying their rent like a year into their lease, and the cops were called, and we jumped on it. As soon as we saw the cops, we were like, oh, hey. So we called the landlord. We're like, oh, I noticed the police are outside. Any chance we could take a look at the unit? And they're like, what? Cops? Like, what's going on? Those guys haven't paid rent. And so the bailiffs came over, they switched the locks, and we were in there the next day being like, oh yeah, this looks great. We'll take it. Even though there was drug paraphernalia all over the floor. The place was in a terrible state of disrepair, but we were like, you know what? This is our chance to finally take over that unit we wanted. We're going for it. So anyway, sorry, Jay, to get back to your original question there. What did we do with that money? It was mostly for construction materials, tenant improvements. We were making sure the place looked really, really good. And then we reserved some money for marketing as well, because I knew that we really needed a good launch to get local support for our product and make sure that everyone in town knew that we were here. And that was what we spent the money on.
Excellent. So tell us more about that launch. So it sounds like you really focused locally, and you mentioned that you put some of that money aside for marketing specifically. So how did you get those first customers? How did you get your name out in the community? How did you make sure that you had the launch that you wanted?
So when we first started, we had 2 months of construction time, but during those 2 months, we also had time to, join the local Chamber of Commerce. We had time to join Tourism Whistler, which is our destination marketing organization. A lot of tourism economies actually rely on the destination marketing or DMO model to promote the destination, and we all buy into that. So we pay monthly dues, but it gives you a chance to go to networking events. So we got out there, we did all those things, had business cards printed pretty early, and made sure that we were going to every local event that we could find. That was number one thing. And as we're getting closer, we got a huge banner made for our front door, which actually is now our side door. It's not the best place for a door, but originally that was our front door because we couldn't get our front unit that we wanted. So I put a huge sign there, and that faced the brewery next door. So everyone coming in and out of the brewery was like, axe throwing, that is crazy. What is going on there?
And those are your customers. You want the drunk people throwing axes, clearly.
and not drunk, but responsibly, maybe socially lubricated.
Yes.
So we had this big banner saying, opening party on this day. We didn't open house. We didn't charge for the first day. We wanted to get people in the door. I created an event on Facebook, and we promoted it on Instagram. We've been promoting on Instagram our entire build. So as we were hitting milestones, when our feature wall went up, we did all this old barn board. It looks very retro, super cool. We posted that up there. We posted when the targets first went up. We posted slow-mos of us practicing throwing axes. And then we went out to every local business in town with a flyer and invited them and all their staff to come out. It's one of the hardest things to do early on when your idea isn't proven and you don't have a big business behind you, is looking someone in the eye and asking them to come support you and believe in yourself. It was really challenging, but we went out there. We had small brochures made, and we just said, come on down, invite all your staff, tell all your friends, we're running an open house. We serve beer. We got licensed for that day, and it turned into a great event. I was really nervous because we were still doing construction up until the final minute that our party started. We were literally painting lines on the floor. Brett's brother was in town, and we're like, hey, can you spray paint this as well while you're here? And I was painting this line, and all of a sudden I look up, and there's someone there, and he's like, oh, hey, I'm here for the open house. And I was like, oh, great. So I threw on a t-shirt real quick, and I stashed the paint, and I was like, let me show you how to throw some axes. So I started teaching him, and as soon as it was done, I was like, man, that was great. It took 10 minutes. We just give him a quick intro. I was like, hey, why don't you grab a beer? And I motioned him over, and I realized like, oh, hey, there's 4 more people ready to throw some axes. So I taught them, and I turned around, and I'm like, oh man, now there's a lineup. And we had a lineup out the door all night. We did hundreds of people that first night. We ran out of we have released the liability waivers everyone has to sign because we're throwing axes, right? So, we got to make sure everyone's on the up and up. So we ran out of waivers. We had to call our friend Matt, who's an accountant at an office around the corner. We were like, any chance you could print off like 100 more waivers for us? Like, we're running low. So everything happened. And really, really funny story. We were so focused on the sprint to the finish of construction. We were so nervous that we weren't going to be able to finish the construction on time that we didn't think actually about operations, which is kind of key to running a business. We were just so focused on our one singular goal of opening the friggin' doors that we kind of forgot about the business. So we were, we did this huge party. Brett and I were like high-fiving all night. A bunch of our friends came in from out of town to support us. It was so awesome. We had the best night. And it was about 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, and we're sweeping up and doing all this stuff. And one of us looks at each other and we're like, oh, hey, like, I guess we're open tomorrow. Like, who's gonna work here? And we're like, oh shoot, I guess that's us. Like, we got to actually show up every day now and do this thing because we haven't spent all our money on staffing. Like, we don't even know what the experience is yet because we're very into experience design, and we wanted to make sure that this was we're not just renting people axes. Like, when they come and show up, they're buying an experience. Like, when you throw axes with Forged, it is friggin' epic, and it's not something you're going to get anywhere else. So we were like, oh, I guess we're doing this. And it was 3 a.m, and I was just so exhausted. We'd literally been working like 75 days straight on this thing. And we both sort of decided like, hey, I need 24 hours. Like, why don't we close for one day? And so our first day of business, we closed. We had to close the doors because we were not ready, which is so embarrassing to think about. But on the good side, our phone was ringing off the hook, and we were booking parties for the entire next week. And I did a little white lie, and I was like, sorry, we're closed for a private event, which was me and Brett sleeping because we were friggin' exhausted. But we opened the next day. Brett and I ran all of the events ourselves because, we were designing that experience as we went. So after every group, we're debriefing like what worked, what didn't work. What if we introduced, this trick shot at this time? And like, what if we played this game a little bit earlier? Why was that group a little more quiet? Like, how do you think we could break them out of their shell? Like, we're trying to really design that experience so that it was replicatable, so that when we did train people and taught them how, we're like, this is the experience you teach them because this is what you do at Forged. And I think that is part of the reason why I've been successful. I should say that, since we've started hiring people, our manager, Jess, and our other staff, and Krista, our assistant manager, and they've added to the experience and they've made it better than we ever could have ourselves. So it has really been a team collaboration, but early on it was just Brett and I doing everything for the first 3 months, and we would just trade shifts, and one of us would do emails while the other person hosted a group, and it was very full on.
Very cool. Go ahead, Jay.
I was just going to say, you mentioned experiences a couple times. And so I'm just curious, how have you crafted your experiences? How have you kind of made it so that it's not just walking in, grabbing some axes and some beer and drunkenly throwing axes? Clearly people are walking in and because they have no knowledge of axe throwing. Like, I'd almost be intimidated to walk into this place because I'm like, are they going to show me how to do this? Are they just going to hand me the axes and expect that I'm going to figure it out myself? So how did you craft those experiences? What was the process, and what did that experience or those experiences ultimately look like?
You know what's funny, Jay? We actually get groups who still come in, and when we give them the demo and then we turn around, we hand the axe to them, they're like, whoa, what do you mean? I thought this was a spectator sport. We're like, no, it's not a show. You're going to do this with us. And they're like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. Like, I can do this. Yeah, you can do this. So the experience, for us, the experience starts when people first find out about your business, right? So for us, a lot of times it starts on Instagram, or it starts through a brochure, or it starts through a Google search, right? So what's the first thing that they're actually going to see about us? And, we're very casual in the way our entire business is structured, and we want that to come across in our marketing. So it's like relaxed, casual, but we take safety very seriously, obviously. So safety is a huge concern for people. We want people to know that, that is front of mind. And but at the same time, like, we're here to have fun. We joke around. If you read our FAQ page, there's a lot of sort of tongue-in-cheek jokes in there and stuff like that. But it starts there and then it carries on. So when people call us, we have like a greeting that sort of hits them with most of the information that they're going to want. So it tells them the hours, and it tells them how to book, and it tells them all those things. So otherwise the phone would be ringing off the hook. So we have sort of that automated answering service to help us out. But then if they want to get through to us, they press 1 or whatever, talk to our staff, and if they want to book over the phone, that's great. But instead of like boring hold music, we got like dope hip hop on there. We're like making this fun. So like the whole thing is about sort of having fun, and all of those touch points are really key for us. And then when people finally walk through the doors, they're not walking into like a sterile, boring ass warehouse. They are walking into a dope experience. So we got like, our whole construction, Brett's the mastermind of design. And he was like, what we should do? We should do like wrought iron piping with like exposed old wood and barn board. And like, we're going to put the Burning Man sign on the wall. Like, we're going to do all this cool stuff. And I was like, all right, cool. Yeah, right on. And then we actually wallpapered our bathroom with archival logging images from this whole area that we're in was founded through logging camps, like through resource extraction. So we found all these old archival images. Brett's girlfriend Jess actually put the wallpaper up in the bathroom, and so people are just like, where are we? This is like such a crazy place. And that's part of the experience too, that visual feast that they get when they get there. And then as soon as they start throwing, they're introduced to their host, who's now like their best friend, who they're going to hang out with for the next hour. And when they leave, it's full of high fives. If they do an amazing shot, they're going to get a Polaroid taken, put on the wall of fame. It is very much like a designed experience. And we want, we are a recreational experience, and we're there to provide people the best experience of their life. So, when they're heading out the door, maybe they buy a hat or a t-shirt, they're proud and super stoked that they can wear that and be like, you would never believe what I did when I was in Whistler.
This is so much fun. I love listening to every little last nugget in this story, and there's so much powerful stuff in there. I think it's fascinating how you were talking about when you started to make sure that you had that line out the door, that it was all more traditional marketing, which I think is fascinating given the year that you started, which was 2017, right? So 2017 is very much, as we know now, the age of everything is online marketing, and it's online, digital, and it's such kind of taking a step back from traditional, yet you found so much powerful success in many of those traditional avenues. So I'm wondering, as the time has gone on over these past 3 years, has that changed at all? Has that morphed exponentially? Has there become a blend of both? How has it changed as your business has grown as far as your marketing avenues?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And the answer, often surprises people when we talk about this. I am a huge believer in just marketing in general. I'm a marketing evangelist. I spent a lot of time working at this marketing firm. And when I was there, my job title was digital specialist. I was the guy, if you wanted pay-per-click ads, if you wanted a content management strategy, if you wanted, whatever, a social media plan, I was the guy who's making all that. And so for the longest time, I was so focused on this digital world. And then hopping over into this business and actually our lighting business actually gave me a small foray into that. We did direct mail for that. And it was something I was like, I can't believe this works, but we're literally willing to try everything, and direct mail had a huge success rate for us. It was incredible. So we had a little taste of it. And when we came over in Forge, we literally try almost any form of marketing that we can get our hands on. But the thing I think people love the most about digital ads and that space is that everything's so trackable, right? And you can attribute your return to a specific click from a specific source, a specific keyword. Like, people really love that. But I think the thing that a lot of people forget is that there's a lot of tracking methods you can use for offline advertising and still attribute your returns to the proper campaign as long as you're setting things up right. I use a service called CallRail to manage our call tracking. So we have hundreds of different phone numbers that forward to our primary number, and we're tracking every single campaign that's out there. And if you've ever done offline advertising, you're really familiar with the calls you get from the sales rep, and they're like, "Oh, hey, James, so it's spring. It's time to get your new campaign up. Last season you spent $2,000. How about you go for that full page?" or whatever their pitch is. And I'll be like, "Oh, you know what, Carol? Just one sec. Let me just pull up my call tracking. Yeah, I see we got like 10% less calls from you guys this season versus last season, we made slight adjustments to the creative, but what do you think can attribute to that? And they're like, whatever. And they'll come up with some idea about why things are the way they are. And, it gives you a very strong negotiation point, first of all, for your future advertising campaigns. And if you find a dud, of which we've had many, we've probably had just as many failures as successes in the marketing world, you take that money and you move it somewhere else, right? Like, we've got a marketing budget that we use, and if we have underperforming ads, chop it. Let's get rid of that thing. Let's move to another source. But we've found great success in many offline channels, such as brochures, targeted newspapers, industry publications, such as there's a wedding publication in our region, and we ran a full page ad there, and we were blown away with the amount of bachelorette parties that started booking. And I was like, I did not expect this many ladies in our space. I thought it was going to be all dudes, and like a lot of our marketing was sort of male focused, and all these women started coming in their feather boas and their, the novelty hats. And I was like, great, I love this. Like, this is awesome. This is so much fun. And so we started focusing on that market. And
that's a great point. A lot of us go into these businesses assuming we know who our customer is or who our customer is going to be. And we need to be open to the fact that maybe those aren't the best customer targeting avenues. Maybe we should be looking at others. And so it's a great example here of how, you would think for an axe throwing business, it would be a group of guys with plaid shirts and beards and drinking beer and coming in and let's do this. And the fact that there are lots of women in bachelorette parties, that's really cool. I would not have expected that.
No, it was a surprise for us, but a welcome surprise. We got enough dudes as well, so it's great to get the ladies in there. So there's all different sorts of marketing channels that you can do. That all being said, I do spend a healthy amount with the big tech companies. Facebook and Google take tons of my money, and I'm happy to give it to them since we're seeing great ROI. We do treat our website as an e-commerce business because that's essentially what it is, right? We were very focused on taking online bookings straight out of the gates. We recognized that a lot of our competitors in town, or other experience providers in town, I should say, were not offering a very friction-free online booking process. And we're like, you know what? This is crazy that it's easier for me to order toilet paper than it is to book a snowmobiling tour. Like, why is this so hard? So we really focused on, reducing the friction, reducing the amount of clicks it takes to make your booking. And we're huge fans of all the online tools as well, such as, AdWords and Facebook and Instagram marketing and display ads. We use all of sort of the traditional online marketing suite of tools. But we definitely still invest heavily in offline for our specific type of business. And I think a lot of businesses that operate in brick and mortar, many of the touch points that you want to ensure in marketing, you want to have touch points so that you can make sure your message is getting out there and you're apparent to your customers. Many of those touch points are still in the offline world. People don't just live online, especially for physical brick and mortar businesses. They're out there. They're in the community. They're in the grocery store. They're at your competitors or partner businesses. What can you do to increase those touch points? And offline advertising is still up there.
It's working for you, clearly. So can we talk a little bit about the numbers, James? Did I read somewhere online that you're now, in just 2.5 years, $1 million business?
Yeah, we're actually just under. So we're at 960 for the year, which we're very proud of in axe throwing revenue. So we've got our hands on a couple other things, but yeah, we're very proud of the success we've had, and and we still see the business growing. So we're very excited about the future of the sport.
Okay, so I want to dig into the numbers a little bit because I know a lot of our listeners are interested in this, and maybe I'm just really interested in this, so I'll use them as an excuse, but I want to hear this. So you said your annual revenue, and I assume it's gross revenue, so the amount of money coming in is about $960,000 a year?
That's right.
Okay, and how much of that goes out the door for expenses, things like rent and employees and all that other stuff?
Yeah, so operating in the brick and mortar space, a couple of huge overhead items that an online business wouldn't have are things like rent. We pay an enormous amount in rent, so it looks like about $6,000 a month for our space, and then you've got things like insurance, right? When you operate an axe throwing venue, you might be surprised to know that insurance is a thing that they charge you for. So
especially when your business is right next to a brewery.
We're actually in between two breweries.
There you go. Perfect.
So, and they're great partners of ours. We love both of them. Shout out to Worcester Brewery and Coast Mountain Brewery. And those guys are awesome. So yeah. And then the biggest line item for our expenses is labor. I talked a lot about our experience and how important that experience is to us. And you can't get an experience if you're short-staffed. We're very focused on that ratio of host to guests to ensure that we're delivering the optimal experience, and we're getting 5-star reviews. I'd encourage listeners to check out some of our reviews because we do get 5 stars. We really do. And the experience is what makes it. Our staff is what makes it. Every month, depending on the month, but it's between like $15,000 and $22,000 on staffing. So it's a big cost to staff the business. And then Brett and I do take a modest salary from the business. We're fully living off of our income we get from this business. It's our primary source of income. But we're not living the high life, not driving a Bugatti or anything crazy like that, right? We are investing a lot of our money back into the business. We're both, younger guys, like we're in our 30s, and we don't need to live the high life. We're very, very excited about growing the business and investing in ourselves and our future success. So, when a lot of people, they want to know like net revenue, like what are you taking home? What are you taking home? It doesn't quite tell the whole picture. Like if you saw my salary, you'd think like, you could probably make that. I made more when I was working at a marketing firm. When I was working in an agency, I was working a lot of hours and I was making great money, and it was a great job. And I took a big pay cut to be an entrepreneur. But the net value of what I'm creating is in my business. And I'm so proud. When I was a kid, I loved playing with Lego. And now that I'm an adult, I love playing in business. I get to build an amazing thing, and it is my business. I'm so proud of this thing. And so a lot of that money gets reinvested. We don't have to reinvest it. It's not like the business would die if we didn't, but it's like, hey, it'd be cool. What if we looked at this little thing, and the return might come over 5 years, but it would really increase our value on the business and the perception of the business. So it's like, these are all projects that we are very willing to take on and invest in back into it.
Okay. I'm sorry. So you're investing back into the business. What are the goals? So is the goal to grow this venue bigger? Is the goal to start multiple axe throwing businesses in other locations? Are you going to franchise something else? What's the ultimate goal here?
When we first started, actually, franchising was really top of mind because we're like, man, we've made this amazing experience. We can train staff to do it. We've got great management in place. We could make another one and another one, another one. But, there were a few other axe throwing venues that came up around the same time as us. And 2 of them really got interested in the franchising game, and they started heavily pursuing that. We're like, okay, so if we do want to franchise, we could do that. And we can try and go head to head with these guys. Or we can look at another avenue of growth. So, we are always working on our venue here, but one key area of growth that we saw was, axe throwing venues love running leagues, and running a league is tough because you gotta track everyone's points, their scores, their standings across an entire season, and then my venue wants to know how they stack up against a venue in like Red Deer or Calgary or wherever or New York, and so we were like, how do we make this easier? So we made we actually got involved in making an axe throwing scoring system. And so you can see our program at 81score.ca. That's for our venue. And then we partnered with one of the largest axe throwing franchises out there to offer the software to all of their venues. So we were like, you know what? I don't want to go head to head with these guys. How can we leverage the success of axe throwing as a whole, benefit our business, and grow a side piece of revenue? Being in a resort town means our revenue is cyclical, right? We rely on the seasons. We have boom times and bust times. We're just about to get into a bit of a bust time right now until the snow falls. So how do we even out this revenue problem that we have? And you do that by getting involved in diversifying into more markets. And we're like, if our axe throwing software was running at 200 venues, we really don't have to worry so much about those revenue gluts. So that was one of the primary things that we did was create, right now the world's largest axe throwing software suite, which is a very niche product. But, with the growth of axe throwing comes the need for things like that. And we were luckily able to fulfill that gap. For our own business though, there's always things that we're doing. I'm not sure if you can see behind me, but we got this drawing. I'm sure you guys are real familiar with it in the real estate space, but we're trying to, we're redoing our bathrooms. We're adding 2 more lanes. We've actually, since we took over the front unit, we took over another unit beside us, and we've exhausted the amount of expansion we can do in our current location. So now we're trying to optimize how our location runs. So we're adding seating, we're improving the retail experience, and we're looking for new partnerships and packages that we can do with wholesale providers such as the bus tour companies, the mass tourism companies. So we can pre-sell a lot of our experiences to our guests before they even get to Whistler. And there's a lot of work you can do on the back end like that.
That's awesome. And so just to plug your business a little bit, I actually went to TripAdvisor to see what your reviews were and to see how many you had. And wow, you've got like 700 5-star reviews. Like you're consistently 5-star. And I think it was close to 700 reviews on TripAdvisor. So clearly you are doing something right. So with that in mind, I want to lead into kind of the last question, unless Carol has something else, but for somebody out there who's looking to start a brick and mortar experience type business like this, if you had to kind of summarize your learnings over the last 3 years and best practices, the mistakes you made and how you wouldn't make them again, what are some tips or what are the best tips you could think of for somebody that's thinking about, I want to go and I want to do this?
The first thing I touch on is that with the rise of e-commerce and online business, there's actually an enormous opportunity for people to invest in brick and mortar. It's something that's been largely ignored, especially by younger entrepreneurs, because they see, everyone sees the success stories of Silicon Valley or, whoever affiliate marketer and the scalability. And that's great. I love all that stuff. It's awesome. But there's great businesses sitting in every town, city, province, state, across the world. I would really take a close look at what markets are being underserved in your immediate area or, in whatever population can support the type of business that you're looking at. And, start running an analysis. A big part of an entrepreneur's job, like everyone romanticizes entrepreneurship, right? But a big part of the work is the work that you never get paid for. It's the million business plans that I've made that are sitting on a shelf that I'm never going to use because I'm like, we did all the due diligence, we did all the research, we did this, we did that, and then it all like fizzles and dies, right? Like, and I'm sure you guys have a bunch of those sitting around too, right? Like the work that you don't get paid for is all that research. And if you're an entrepreneur, you got to love that. You got to love that drive and like that quest for opportunities. It's not like I jump on every opportunity that we find. Like Brett and I come up with 1,000 really, really bad ideas for every good idea that might like bubble to the surface. And we're like, oh my God, we got something finally. So I'd encourage everyone to start looking. First of all, you really got to be curious. You got to look, see what's out there, and especially in brick and mortar with the lack of people interested in the space right now, I'd really encourage people to look at any businesses that might be for sale that you think you could add value to. I think there's huge opportunity in looking for some of those entrepreneurs that might be either aging out of their business or they're looking for retirement, they're looking for succession, and they don't have it. It's really hard to find now. It used to be there was no online business that was taking all the young entrepreneurs and everyone wanted that opportunity. And now no one wants it. There's businesses selling for 1x earnings. It's wild. Like get in there, improve that thing and make some money. Like there's huge opportunities sitting on people's doorsteps.
I love that. I mean, these days, all you hear about are people talking about online businesses and nothing wrong with that. But you hear start an Amazon business or start an e-commerce store or do internet marketing or whatever the online businesses, thinking this is great because I can start with no money and I can sit at my computer and do all this. But the key is there's so much competition there. And the reason there's so much competition there is because everybody is trying to do this. And the place where there's no competition right now, not no competition, obviously, but the place where there's a lot less competition than there was just a few years ago are in these brick and mortar stores, because everybody's kind of, the young folks are focused on online. The older folks are transitioning out, they're getting towards retirement, and they're shutting down these businesses. And like you said, this is a great opportunity for people to come in and literally be able to say, don't just retire, don't just shut down your business. Let me take your business over. I will give you 1 time earning or 1.5 times earnings, which is a very low number. I mean, basically
Super low.
You get your investment back in a year or 2 years.
Yeah, it's exactly that. Right now, money is super cheap to borrow. So I'd really encourage people. A lot of people are nervous about taking financing, and I get it. And when you're starting a new venture, it's slightly riskier than buying an existing one. We did start from scratch. I'm not saying don't do that, but if you're curious about the space, you want to get your feet wet in entrepreneurship, look at those opportunities. 1 times, 1.5 times earnings. If you're borrowing money and you can make back that investment in 1.5 years, that's nothing, man. That's nothing. You're just getting started at that point. Like 1.5 years ago, it was nowhere near like our business where it's at right now. There's so much value, so much change, and so much energy you can inject into a business like that. I always like when I talk to people about this, I always like link it to real estate, because there's been I'm sure you guys are familiar with the huge rise, the reno shows, the flipping shows, all this. And the advice is exactly the same. Look for a value that you can provide some value to, fix that place up, make some money through either increased revenue and rent in the real estate analogy there, or improve sales in the retail analogy, or whatever you want it to be, and grow that business. And if you want, there's an exit always there. You can always look at selling in the future. There's always people who are going to be wanting to buy and sell businesses. It's a marketplace. So, I'd really encourage people to look at what financing is available right now. Money's crazy cheap at the moment. So if you can't make borrowed money work right now, in the 80s, interest rates were at like 20%. Like right now, they're sitting at like 5, 6, 7%. Like it is really low. So I'd encourage people to explore that.
And here's another tip for anybody that's thinking about buying a business but doesn't have the cash. Even if it's a small amount of cash that you don't have, there are enough people out there that are looking to get out of their businesses or looking to sell their businesses, that you can go to them and you can say, I know you want, I'm going to make up numbers, you want $100,000 for your business. I'll give you $150,000 for your business, but I want seller financing. I want to pay you that $150,000 over the next 5 years or the next 10 years out of the profits from the business. And for a lot of sellers out there who may not need, and this is the way it works with seller financing in real estate. For a lot of sellers out there who don't necessarily need the money today for something else, they may be happy to wait 2 or 5 or 10 years for their money, or to get their money over a period of time in return for a higher sales price. So relying on the seller of a business for seller financing is a great opportunity as well.
Absolutely. And the other thing is, a lot of these people want to see their businesses keep going. I mentioned earlier, I sold my lighting business this week, and the guy I sold it to is my longtime manager, and I gave him a skookum deal because I really like the guy, and I know he's not going to drive my business into the ground. I'm really proud of what I created. I worked on that thing for 7 years. I don't want to just sell it to someone who's going to screw it all up. Like, I want Josh to take it on, and he's going to do a bang up job. Sure, I gave him a great deal, but ultimately, I really want to see that business succeed. So I think there's a lot of value in that to entrepreneurs who want to see their legacy or their business continue that they built. It takes a lot of blood, sweat, and tears to make a business, and seeing it fall apart would really crush me.
I love this, James. You are just clearly such an entrepreneur at heart. Like, at the core of your soul is entrepreneurship, and to hear the pride in everything that you've done and the desire to leave a lasting legacy is just, it's fantastic. I just love listening to you. It's been great. It's been great. But I hate to say this, we need to get to the 4 more. Oh my gosh, we could talk for hours, but let's get to the part of our show called the 4 more. It's where we're going to ask you 4 questions that we ask every guest. And then at the end, we're going to ask where we can find out more about you. Okay, ready for number 1? So, James, what was your first or your worst job ever? And what lessons did you learn from it?
So I'm going to try and answer this one, but the worst job I ever had was actually tree planting. But I'm going to put a caveat there that I did it for a really long time, and it changed from one of the worst jobs I ever had to one of the best jobs I ever had through sheer just determination and hard will. So in tree planting, it's really an industry that exists primarily here in British Columbia in Canada. You get paid about 10 cents, maybe 15, maybe 20 cents per tree. And it's mostly college-age kids who are going out and doing it. But these logging companies are mandated by the government to replant the forest that they cut down. So for every tree they cut down, they got to pay us to go plant one. So there's millions of dollars spent every year on reforestation efforts in British Columbia. And it's through mountainous terrain. There's no like automated system they can do to do it because it's in really remote regions. So they pay guys like me to go do it. And when I first started, I think the season's only 2 months long. So you can only do like 50 days of actual labor while you're out there. The first day, I think I made like $30. And camp charges you $25 to stay there because that's all your food. You got a place for your tent. They provide the transportation. So I made $5 that day
all
for
day.
12 hours of work in the beating sun, mosquitoes in my ears. Like I was losing it. I'm like, what am I doing? I should get a job at McDonald's. But I stuck with it for a really long time. And I started making a little bit more money. And pretty soon I was clearing, $10, $15, $17, $18,000 through the summer season. And I'm at my desk right now at Forged. Above my desk, I keep my shovel because this thing reminds me what hard work is all about. This shovel has planted millions of trees and provided tens of thousands of dollars that I've used for my education and to start businesses. So, it started as my worst job I ever had and turned into the best one because of the opportunity it provided.
That is awesome. I love that you still have your shovel. That's
Excalibur.
awesome.
She's a great shovel.
Okay, question number 2. What's an opportunity you said no to, and in retrospect, was it the right decision?
Oh man, there's so many opportunities. When I think back to when we first started the lighting businesses, actually, Brett started, we started independently of each other. Brett started one in Whistler and he told me about it. And he's like, hey, I was working in Calgary. I did this winter work and I was doing this thing. And I remember hearing about it at first and I was like, Brett, man, I don't know, like this, I don't think there's like enough of a market for that. It sounds too niche. And, I went and got a full-time job. I got my marketing job. And, the next year he's struggling a little bit with it. And I remember talking to him and he was doing this, he was doing that. And I was like, yeah, I made the right call. And then the next year he had like a breakout year and he's the hardest working guy I know. He made a ton of money, a ton of contracts. And I was like, oh shoot, I missed the boat. This was a huge mistake. Why didn't I get in on this earlier? Brett identified it. I falsely thought that we wouldn't be able to make it work. And I went back to him with sort of my tail between my legs and I was like, any chance you could teach me how to do that now? Because I see the level of success and why don't we mirror it in Victoria? And lucky for me, Brett's like best friend and nicest guy in the world. He ran a training day for me, helped me off the ground. And then we ran the businesses in tandem for years after that. So that was one that I definitely screwed up on in early days, but luckily we were able to correct the course.
That's wonderful. Okay, third question. If you could go back in time before you started Forged, what advice would you give yourself?
I would always encourage people if they're curious about entrepreneurship is to, keep everyone loves reading and reading the case studies, listen to the podcasts and trying to learn as much as they can, which I think is great. But the critical piece that you're never going to overcome if you don't do it is starting a business now. If you do not start something, no matter what it is, like start something or help someone else improve their business. If you see yourself as an entrepreneur, there's some critical things you're going to have to do. You got to know how to get customers. You got to know how to figure out operations. You got to know how to deliver either an experience or a service in a top level method. You got to know about cash flow. Help someone else do those things or do it yourself. I always look at jobs as, people, oftentimes people are like, the rat race this, rat race that. I can't wait to get out. No, if you're in the rat race, look at it as an internship as for your future business. I learned so much at my marketing firm job, and I was lucky enough that my boss was very keen on teaching us about aspects of the business, how to get contracts. she would say like, we got an or a request for proposal here. James, you want to take it? And I was like, oh my God, here we go. Like I gotta try and secure a piece of new business. She'd say like, I don't have time to go to this conference. And I'm like, I'll go meet those people, jump on those opportunities because, all of those things are elements that you can use in your future success. So, if you're doing nothing, you just got laid off, you don't have a job, you don't know what to do, just start something, man. There's got to be something that you can deliver to people that is going to provide value. So that is the core of entrepreneurship right there. You can read all you want, you can listen all you want, you can do an MBA, you can do all those things. But if you never actually do business, you're not going to make it, man.
It's all about taking action. I love that. Okay. Question number 4. What's something you splurged on, but was totally worth it?
Yeah, right. I was kind of getting ready for this question. So there's a few things I've splurged on for sure. I'm not a huge fan of fancy car. I mean, I love fancy cars, but I don't personally drive one myself. I rent them occasionally. But one thing I do love is travel, and I try and reserve a small amount of money every year to take a trip. So and every year it feels like I don't have the money to do this. Like I could use this money and I could buy like whatever I need, like a new computer, or I could buy like, whatever for the business. Maybe I just take that money and put it into something else. But it's like your mental health is actually extremely important. And one of the things that I find helps my mental health is travel. So last year, I do a trip every year, but last year my girlfriend and I went to the Southern United States, which is an area I hadn't been to before. We went to New Orleans and we went to Baton Rouge. We saw a football game, an LSU football game. We ate and drank and had an amazing time. We're down there for 10 days. And, like I'm not traveling in opulent luxury here. Like we're Airbnb-ing and we're renting a car. Like we're just doing whatever we want. But it's a lot of fun. And it also gives me a chance. Claire, my girlfriend, loves doing things. And I was like, while we're here, why don't we check out this kayaking tour? Because I really want to see how they're delivering the experience. Why don't we check out this food tour? I'd really love to see how they're doing this. And it gives you a chance to do a lot of market research when you're in different tourism hubs like that, and also gives us a great chance to spend awesome time together. Yes, it was maybe a little bit more spendy than I should have done, but totally worth it. One of those things I'd never take back.
It sounds like a great trip. How fun.
It was really good. LSU football, well, go LSU. I just got to say, those fans, Death Valley, incredible stadium. The most amazing fans I've ever seen. We were there for the homecoming game last year.
Wow, that is hardcore.
Blew my mind.
Sure.
We don't have anything like that up in Canada. Tailgating's not a thing because we got hockey and it's freezing. So you guys are onto something down there.
Awesome. Jay, what you got?
I think that was the 4th question. I'm going to ask a 5th question.
I'm so bad at counting these.
You are so bad at counting.
Wow.
Sounds like you want a 5th question. I'm going to ask a 5th question because I know this is the 4 more, but I've had a number of people that always ask me, why aren't we asking what people's favorite business books are? Because I know we often talk about on the real estate podcast or the money podcast, they ask the question, what's your favorite book? So I'm going to ask that question as number 5 today. What is your favorite business book that you've ever read?
Okay, do I have to pick just one or can I name maybe a couple?
Name a couple. Go for it.
Okay. So, I know it's a cliche and I bet you a lot of people are going to say this, but when I first read, it was 2008, I think, when I first read Tim Ferriss's 4-Hour Work Week. Yep. That was a big change in mindset for a lot of different things. He was selling, primarily he was working on a supplement business and things like that. And I wasn't really interested in that and I didn't want to do that. But the way he was approaching things and he was looking at, the way he negotiated contracts for advertising, I thought, man, that's really interesting. Advertising is a perishable asset. It's worthless once the thing goes into print. That's a really interesting way of looking at it. I hadn't thought about it. And the way he talked about currency arbitrage, I thought was very interesting. We currently work with people all over the world. And, it's something that maybe that book inspired. So I think that I've reread that thing like 3-4 times because it's just a great case study of someone who's tried to look at things unconventionally and say like, I didn't need to do an MBA to succeed in business. I just had to think critically and, follow what's working and test everything I can. And I really love that attitude that he has towards things. So I thought that was really, really good. And from a pure business standpoint, I read a book about the 80-20 rule, and I think it's just called the 80-20 rule. And I was running my lighting business at the time, and I was reading this, and I'm like, And, one of the things they sort of talk about, they give all these examples. It's like, that 80% of your problems come from 20% of your customers. And I was like, yeah, they do. Like, why am I dealing with these people? They're killing me here. Like, and their contracts are tiny. It's not a huge part. I'm like, why am I trying to make these guys happy? Nothing's going to make them happy. Like, I just got to get rid of them. Like, here. And you know what I did is I wrote this really nice letter to my competitor, and I was like, hey, man, I actually can't deliver the best service to these people. I think maybe you can.
You have them. Here you go. Here's a little present for you.
Yeah.
Have fun.
And so I wrapped that one in a gift bow, sent it over to them. They loved me. They sent me some business in the future. They were like, yeah, James, you're a great guy. And I'm like, thank you. I really appreciate you taking care of that customer.
Win.
Yeah, that's right.
That is so cool. Okay, so James, the more question, where can our audience find out more about what you're doing and connect with you?
Yeah, so if you just search for Forged Axe Throwing, I guarantee you that we're going to show up there. So we're online at forgedaxe.ca or forgedaxe.com. If you want to check out our axe throwing software, it's 81score.com. Or if you participate in the World Axe Throwing League, you'll be using our software actually, so you can check it out there. And if you are curious about the axe throwing industry, I get tons of questions on how do I start my own venue? How do I do this? How do I do that? I packaged everything up for you. If you go to axecourse.com, I will tell you exactly how we did it. And in there is a Facebook group where you can ask me any questions you want. I post videos all the time about how we do different things, set things up, why we do them this way. And so I can't wait to hear from you. If you're curious about the industry at all, I'm like super keen to know where your venue is and how I can help you get there. I just want to say, if you get into axe throwing, a rising tide, I believe, raises all boats. I want to see axe throwing as the next Olympic sport. So I'm dying for more entrepreneurs to get out there and latch onto this so that we can grow the sport, the community. So I can't wait to see you at the next tournament.
So for all our listeners out there, James is begging you to compete with him. Start your own business.
I love competition. I love competition because it makes me better. It keeps me sharp, and it means that we're heading in the right direction. There's enough room for us. I guarantee it.
I love that abundance.
Love that.
Awesome. James, this has been absolutely fantastic. I know our audience is going to love this. I've loved this. This has been tremendously educational and also entertaining. So thank you so much for being with us today. And we look forward to chatting with you soon.
Totally. Have so much fun. Have so much fun with everything you do. I want to work with you. My goodness. So much fun.
Carol's only saying that because we know that you're getting ready to take your whole staff on a bungee jumping trip right after this recording. So That's why Carol's saying that.
So much awesomeness. So much awesomeness.
Huge shout out to Whistler Bungee. Can't wait to be jumping off that bridge. It's going to be wild.
Awesome. Thank you so much, James. Talk to you soon.
Thank you, guys.
Bye-bye.
Loved James. Seriously, was that such an awesome interview, Jay?
I love the fact that he was so enthusiastic about his business. I mean, seriously, he was probably one of the happiest people that we've talked to. It was just the enthusiasm just came right through. And I love the last part of that discussion about for people that want to be starting their own business, that want to be jumping into entrepreneurship, basically don't sit around and wait for it to happen. Take action. And even if you're not ready to start your own business, go help somebody with their business. If you're in a 9-to-5 job, use that as an internship and use that to learn, to prepare for when you're ready to start your own business. I mean, just amazing insight there for anybody that's looking to get started with entrepreneurship.
It really is. And I want to just one last thing on what you said about how much fun he's having and how much he loves it. Who in the world would not want to go through the doors of his business and tell all their friends about it? It's no surprise that they have, what you said, almost 800 5-star reviews. It's just that experience just permeates in everything that he does, everything that he says. He's really mastered creating an experience, and he was able to teach us so many great things about how to make that happen.
Yep.
All right, let's wrap this up, baby.
All righty. She's Carol. I'm Jay.
Now just get out there and start your business today.
Awesome.
Have a good one, everybody.
Love it. Take care, everybody.
Bye.